Hi and welcome to the book reading Orgasmic Blueprint number 5. I just needed to quit the streaming from before because I had some trouble with my microphone, and I hope now you can hear me well and it looks good, much better. So I hope you have practiced waking up the hands and found already some pleasure through the direct route and the inflow, and find the distinction between the direct and indirect route. In the following part, I will read deeper about the 3 components of pleasure to give you more understanding and more depth about what it means, direct and indirect route. So we talk about this map, the 3 components of pleasure. So I hope you can see it. It's very bright. So I will explain that map in the video that you just find here in the video popping up somewhere, or as well in the video description. So please have a look, and I hope you are as excited in going through that as I'm excited reading for you. All right. Let's begin the 3 components of pleasure. We live in a fantasy world, a world of illusion, and the great task in life is to find reality. That's from Iris Murdoch. The 3 components of pleasure are attention, meaning, and stimuli, are all about bringing your attention to what is physically happening in your skin, and to know the difference between sensations and story we all attach to our experience of touch. Noticing stimuli through focused attention is a necessity factor for somatic awakening. Absolutely worth it. So this map, the 3 components of pleasure that you just have seen, contains aspect of the noticing and meaning map in the direct and indirect route of pleasure. So when you practice waking up your hands, you are engaging the noticing part of your brain, and this is the part of the brain where we wake up through mindfulness of any sort. So when your noticing brain is activated, you can choose to bring your moment-to-moment attention internally, i.e. to what's going on inside your body regarding thoughts, feelings, and sensations, or externally to what is going on outside of your body. So when you direct your attention to your internal world, there are 2 different things you could focus on. The first one is your attention to stimuli, so the sensations coming via the direct route of pleasure, or you bring your attention to the meaning, the story your mind links to whatever is happening, and the indirect route of pleasure, such as thoughts, fantasies, agenda, goal towards climax, or your partner's positive response to what is happening. So attention to stimuli versus attention to meaning. Stimuli refers to the direct route of pleasure and your somatic experience. So you notice what is happening on your skin because of the inflow of sensations from physical stimuli. Because of the incredible amount of nerve endings in your hands, when you bring all your attention to them and slow down enough, you notice sensations in the form of pleasure being relayed via the nerves which connect to nerve cells in your brain. When you do this, you intensify the experience. If, however, while touching someone with one hand, you're holding something such as a mobile phone in the other and focusing on that, you won't feel as much at all from your contact to the person, because your attention is zoomed in instead, like the lens of the camera into the phone. Maybe you have noticed how it feels when your partner is distracted and their attention isn't present to their own experience when they touch you. Would you agree that being touched with full presence is much more intensive, intimate, and exquisite experience? I think so. The meaning is related to the context your working brain gives you experience and the indirect route of pleasure. It is a story your working brain comes up with during action, the meaning your mind gives to what is happening. This alters how you feel about your experience. We all have a tendency to get lost in the story and meaning which can be triggered by touch. Instead of focusing on the present moment, connecting to ourselves and to our partners, we often drift into making future plans, indulge in past memories, or create sexual fantasies. If, while touching your partner, your attention jumps from being aware of the stimuli in your hands to how your partner might be feeling, or you begin to wonder what your partner might be thinking about what you are doing, the meaning takes the attention away from the stimuli and your direct experience. When your thoughts about the other experience becomes more present than your own sensation, their response becomes more important than embodying your own experience of touch. You lose your ability to fully sense the stimuli coming in from your hands as the meaning, the story, gains prime attention and the stimuli takes a second place. The direct route of stimuli and indirect route of meaning exists simultaneously. The barrier to growth is that most people have a dependency on the other person's response through the indirect route, so the meaning, and neglect the connection possible by tuning into their own sensations, independent of any story stimuli. When something comes into contact with your skin, you recognize input that travels to your sensory cortex as raw data. So the working mind gives meaning to your experience, creating context which amplifies the stimuli or suppresses it, either consciously or unconsciously. This affects how you emotionally feel about that touch, whether it's connected to a story of love, foreplay, erotism, or something else. A common meaning story many get caught up is, when I touch someone, it is foreplay to sensual pleasure, which is foreplay to sexual arousal, which is foreplay to sex. When the sensation of the stimuli is attached to the meaning that sensual pleasure must lead to sexual encounter and sexual encounter must lead to sex and sex must lead to orgasm, we create a meaning atop of the stimuli. This has a negative effect on the stimuli. It gives the stimuli we feel an added agenda. So whatever we feel stimuli, we go through this protocol. The stimuli and meaning we usually and naturally interrelated. Again, the stimuli and meaning are usually and naturally interrelated. Full stop. They are always present together. We have to be able to identify and differentiate between them. However, so that the stimuli isn't overwritten by the meaning, stories we attach to them. All lines linking the 3 points in the 3 components of pleasure map are equally important. Awareness of where you direct your attention to first meaning or second stimuli. Awareness of the relative focus you give to either component. The main learning here is the possibility to differentiate and to choose where your attention is going. So there's a little visualization experience. Imagine that right now your lover or someone you like to be like your lover is wrapping their arms around you. Feels good, right? Now imagine the same thing happens while you're standing in a bus. Now turn around and see it's not your lover embracing you, but a stranger. Not so nice, right? The same situation with a different meaning can create a different experience and possibly be completely turned off. Now imagine you turn around and see a great friend you have been missing. They've been away for a year and wanted to surprise you. How would that feel? Is that a more pleasant scenario? To become fully embodied in somatic experience, we have to be capable of understanding the difference between meaning and sensory stimuli. Otherwise, the meaning will always interfere, speaking loudly over your experience, dictating story so that the sensation can't be sensed in their purity and depth. again, focusing your full attention on the sensory stimuli in the present moment without any story whatsoever is the direct root and the primary dynamic we talk about here. Focusing attention on many meaning you give to your experience is a bonus or extra formulated by the working brain. The indirect root is the secondary dynamic. When the difference is clear, we are fully capable of using and identifying the meaning through conscious choice. We are aware of any meaning without losing connection to our own direct experience. To break out of any mind loop dedicated by the working brain, ask yourself where your attention is being directed. This way, when you touch someone or something, you can choose to bring your attention to the action itself, and in doing so, you can more easily tune into the sensation being experienced by your skin. Have you ever been touched by someone who is fully engaged in the experience with you, while having their attention in the experience of their own skin instead of creating a story about what that touch means to you? This is, in many cases, the most exquisite touch we can experience. It feels full, flowing, authentic, present, and alive. Differentiating between the direct and indirect root and using them together. When you activate your hands to become aware of the direct root of pleasure, you bring your full attention to the stimuli. And as the meaning-making story or context is going on at the same time, it can be difficult to differentiate between the two roots. However, when you consciously choose to focus on the stimuli, you experience the full depth of your tactile sensory capacity. This tremendously increases the possibility for pleasure and opens up a deeper connection to self and your partner as you explore touch in a more genuine manner, because while doing so you become less dependent on fantasy, story, or meaning. So when you significantly raise your awareness of the stimuli and are able to focus on it without getting lost in the meaning, you are able to differentiate between the two roots. Then, specifically when it comes to touching others, it's easy to add the indirect root of meaning as a sort of bonus on top of what you feel already. Like the icing on the cake. The increased amount of pleasure and connection that ensures it's only possible when you are aware of the difference between the two roots of pleasure at the first place. The pull and the push of pleasure. Pushing will get a person almost anywhere, except through a door marked with pull. We all have the capacity to feel pleasure, and it's vital for our physical and mental well-being. This is a well-researched fact in the fields of physiology and neurology. Inability to feel pleasure or anhedonia is one of the most important factors influencing many psychological problems, including depression. Feeling pleasure releases the neurotransmitter dopamine, which lights up the reward center in your brain. And we all know and want more pleasure, so why is it something elusive? One less researched or understood element of pleasure is that you cannot push or force it. Do you generally feel relaxed if you force yourself to do something? Pushing or forcing doesn't calm the nervous system at all. It's more likely to make you feel unsafe and trigger the fight or flight response. Do you feel pleasure when you are on high alert? Not usually. We gain pleasure from many sources, and they are all connected to our senses. And what kind of food and drink do you get pleasure from? And how about the things you like to listen to? Music, the sounds of nature, someone giving you a compliment or saying I love you. Which scenes do you prefer? What kind of visual lights you up? Maybe a view of the ocean, scenery during a road trip, a loved one's face, art, a friend's laughing with you, your favorite team playing a game. we tend to be pretty clear about the rest of our senses. We know what we love to see, hear, smell, and taste. When it comes to touch, many of us are a little mixed up. We tend to think that we should want or do things that we actually don't want at all. This, of course, is due to social conditioning, generalizations about what's normal, imprinted in our subconscious from films, novels, articles, peers, and advertisement, and other stories. We are programmed into accepting these expectations and push ourselves and others to adhere to them. We often do what we think we ought to because we have generally accepted it as a norm and fear being rejected if we want something different. When this happens, we get distracted away from the actual pleasurable sensation we might feel as we try pushing through with our habitual processes. The nervous system needs to be in a state of relaxation for you to be able to notice the inflow of sensations from touch. This means you can't focus on sensation and push yourself to perform at the same time. As soon as you start pushing, you lose the ability to go deeper. So what can we do? The answer is to be aware of what feels like a push and what feels like a pull. A push feels something like this. I really don't like that, but I should feel comfortable with it by now. When we think this, we tend to force ourselves to go through or along with whatever it is and may think there is something wrong with us for not being comfortable with the sensation. Or we go into habitual action to seek pleasure that finally leads to a pleasurable goal such as orgasm. Pushing is in total contrast to everything this book is about. A pull feels something like this. That sounds exciting. I'd love to do or to try it. Maybe it's something you already like or would like to experience with. You might feel a little nervous about it if it's a new experience, but nevertheless you feel drawn to get pleasure from that experience. By following the pull to your own pleasure without any notion of a pre-planned route to a goal, you explore the moment and see where it takes you. Following the pull rather than the push is relevant for many experiences in life, of course. I remember times in the past when I eagerly tried to push myself through an experience everyone else was doing. One example was a breathwork session that promised transformative spiritual experiences. There was quite a bit of peer pressure in the group and I wanted to belong. So I allowed myself to be coaxed and pushed by the facilitator to go deeper. To fake it until you make it and to push through any resistance I feel. It didn't work for me, and back then I didn't understand why. A few years later, I had a very different experience. The facilitator wasn't pushy at all. Instead, he invited me to find the intuitive flow of my breath, to allow it to go wherever it wants to take me, even if the breath was suspended for some moments. I followed the joy of my breath rather than pushing myself to breathe in a way that didn't feel good to me. This was a much deeper and liberating experience. Can you think of times you followed the pull? How did that feel? And can you think of times you gave into the push? And how did that feel? So when you follow the pull to your own pleasure, you bring your awareness to where it already feels pleasure. Imagine you already experienced some kind of pleasurable touch, maybe feeling someone's hand on your back, holding someone's hands, or sharing a hug. This already feels good, right? When you bring your full attention to the pleasure you are already feeling, what's happening? Again, when you bring your full attention to the pleasure you're already feeling, what's happening? That's right, the pleasure increases. This is because by bringing your attention to the inflow of sensation, you activate the direct route of pleasure. In doing so, much more information is relayed from your skin to the pleasure sensory in your brain. And this starts as a chain reaction. Your nervous system relaxes, your brain waves slow down, your breathing regulates, your blood pressure normalizes, and your muscles soften. With these changes, you experience a general state of pleasurable well-being. Next time you feel you're pushing yourself, I invite you to stop. Take a breath and notice your inner dialogue. Do you notice yourself thinking you should be feeling something different? An urge to speed up or to follow a well-versed pattern of touch? Do you feel any pressure to perform? Now, instead, feel into the pull. Wait for the impulse toward what already feels good and slowly follow the impulses of that pull. When you feel pleasure, it's like a warm light in the dark, beckoning you to come towards it. Rather than trying to control it or to change its location, notice that warm light and follow its lead. Allow yourself to relax into the pleasure you're already experiencing, whatever or wherever that pleasure is. When you are aware of your pulse, you will be aware of what you want and have the insights to ask for it. When you're aware of the pushes, you know where your boundaries are. Be able to set limits in agreement with others and consciously explore expanding your comfort zones. That was it for today. I wholeheartedly invite you to continue waking up the hands and finding the deeper meaning between the meaning, the story, the context, and the stimuli, the inflow, the sensation, the experience of when you touch and feel. And feel into what the difference is where you bring your attention to one or the other. Thanks for joining today. Please like and subscribe and get notifications for the next reading. And thanks for joining and have a wonderful evening. Bye for now.